What's up guys, YST here and welcome back to another Raid Shadow Legends video. And the time has come, the guaranteed champion that we've all been banging on about, that is so overdue, has finally arrived in Teleria. But is it a great champion? Can you guess it from the thumbnail? We will reveal it straight away. But this will be coinciding with a 10x event, all starting this Friday, November 18th. So let's reveal the guaranteed champion first, which you will need 150 Ancient Shards to get this dude. Did you guess it? Here we go. So we got Staltus Dragonbane, the person who slayed Dracomorph, left him in the dirt, and he's actually a really great champion to have on your accounts. So I'll briefly talk about his kit for anybody that will be looking to summon this champion. And then we'll break down the Sylvan Watcher 10x, which is pretty sweet as well to coincide with this. So on the Axe of Glory, attacks one enemy 2 times. If the target is under any debuff, each hit decreases the target's turn meter by 10%. So this is a really nice A1. Like if you grant how many times there is debuffs on the target, such as the Fire Knight for instance, it's a nice little turn meter manipulation to go with the rest of his kit here. And it hits twice, so really good for Warmaster procs if you want to build him that way. And on the Drake Hunter tactics, attacks all enemies 2 times, and each hit has a 50% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. And this is bookable up to a 65% chance. And I think that's pretty reasonable for an AoE skill that actually hits twice and has some nice damage multipliers from what I've seen in the past. I believe if he's fully optimized in the right scenario, you can see a surplus of 100,000 per hit. So definitely nice, and I'm a big fan of these abilities. Like a big one would be a nice one to pair it with, where they're doing CC and nuking in the same skill set. So I really like this A2 here, and it's versatile for a big amount of places. And then heading into the A3 ability on the Dragonheart, places a 60% increased defense buff on this champion for 3 turns, then will attack all enemies. Now this champion does scale off defense, and it actually hits really hard from playtesting when we had those test server access. So I'm a big fan of this A3. And there's a chance of placing crit damage or decreased speed based on having your attack higher than the defense, or the attack equal to or lower than the defense. On the passive with Untarnished, whenever an enemy attempts to place a weakened debuff, a decreased defense or poison debuff on this champion will then reflect those back to the attacker, and damage increases by 5% for each debuff on the target. So the more debuffs you get up, the harder you're going to hit. So really nice passive here. And a defense in all battles, which I'm a huge fan of, by 30%. Now aesthetic wise, kit wise and everything, I actually think this is a pretty solid guaranteed champion. But you guys can let me know in the comment section, are you happy with this after all of this time waiting for this champion to be the guaranteed? I think I'd say all of the player base, it's a champion that you could have used for. He hits hard, he does CCs, he has turn meter manipulation, and a funky little passive to reflect debuffs and increase damage. So yeah, I like him. Will I be going for him? Nope. And the reason being is, I don't have enough shards, as I was the people that got baited into all of the previous events we had. So is what it is, but I hope that any of you guys who do have the shards and summon him, I hope that he makes a big impact to your accounts. So alright, let's talk about the 10x champions, which looks like is all going to be from the Sylvan Watchers. So if you're looking to prepare for the faction wars, that's kind of estimated 5 to 6 months from now, then this is a nice time to kind of bump up your accounts. And if you're summoning for the Staltus Dragonbane anyway, then you may see some of these pop out of your shards. So this will be coinciding with that guaranteed event, and there's so many in here. So we're going to start with Ailil, the Void Legendary, and on a personal basis, I felt a little bit underwhelmed from him, but a lot of people seem to like him, which is okay. We can all have our opinions, but he seems to be the first person to kind of counter that stone skin meta, right? Attacks one enemy, steals all buffs from the target. The first time this champion hits them with this skill, this effect cannot be resisted, meaning that you do not need accuracy. And each subsequent time this attack hits an enemy, no buffs will be stolen. Instead, the damage will be increased by 10% for each buff on the target. On the Pierce of Carapace, can attack one enemy and will ignore Strengthen, Stone Skin, Increased Defense, and Ally Protection buffs. And if this attack kills an enemy, fully heals this champion and places a stone skin buff on them for 1 turn. Now, it could just be that my account isn't highly developed in terms of optimizing his damage to the fullest of capabilities, but it didn't seem to hit as hard as I wanted it to be, unfortunately. But I could be wrong. Some of you guys may have him and make him work in your compositions, but just something that I noticed when I was playing, it just didn't seem super top tier for me anyway, but is what it is. We then got an AoE, and before attacking removes any increased defense buff on each target and replaces them with a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. Also removes any strengthen buffs on each target and replaces them with a weaken. Will then place a block buffs debuff for 1 turn on enemies not under increased defense or strengthen before attacking, and the buff removal and debuff placement cannot be resisted. So really strong A3 here in terms of what he's bringing, and I don't think he's trash, don't get me wrong. I think just in terms of fully utilizing this A2, I just couldn't make it to work because the people that I'm trying to ignore the stone skin and strengthens from, I couldn't one-shot, like maybe a Necro or something. But okay, Force of Nature increases this champion's HP by 2,000 and defense by 100 for every 1,000 attack they have. So it makes him extra tanky and fills this champion's turn meter by 10% whenever they receive a buff. Aesthetic-wise, kit-wise, I'm a fan of him, but is it somebody that I kind of chasing on my account? No, not at the moment. Next up, shout out to Nub Rates. He's a huge fan of Elva, and she's absolutely awesome. And if she pulls out of one of your shards, do not feel disheartened about this one. So, continuous heal on the A1, which is really solid, and has a 100% chance of removing all debuffs from all allies to a full out cleanse, and places a block debuffs buff and an increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. Now, having all of this in one ability is just bonkers, guys. Like, you're stripping buffs, you're placing block debuffs and an increased speed. So, yeah, I really like this and could be a straight out swap for somebody like an Heiress in your clan boss team as well, because she does a very similar thing by increasing speed and removing debuffs on a 3-turn cooldown. She will then revive a target ally with 40% HP and 50% turn meter, then place a 60% increased defense buff and increased attack buff on that ally for 2 turns. So really, really strong revivability here. And he heals each ally by 10% of their max HP at the start of their turn and places a perfect veil buff on them for 1 turn on the ally with the lowest HP. And also an aura by 19%. Now, out of all of the legendaries, this is the one that I would want the most. Next up is the one that I actually thought would be the guaranteed champion. So we got King Gallcobar. Looks really cool with a little dragon on his head. And he has got attacks 1 enemy, shield buff for 2 turns on the ally with the lowest HP. And the value of this shield is equal to 15% of the ally's max HP. We'll then do an AoE with a 100% chance of removing all buffs. And places a 5% poison debuff for 2 turns on each enemy for every buff removed from them. Also has a 100% chance of placing a block buffs debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. So this is actually a really strong A2 in my opinion. I'm a big fan of that. And then on the Hypertrophy, removes all debuffs from all allies to a full out cleanse. And places a continuous heal buff for 1 turn on each ally for every debuff removed from them. Will then place a shield buff on all allies for 2 turns. And the value of this shield is equal to 25% of this champion's max HP. So yeah, I think overall, he's a really strong champion. And if he was to pop out, I would have a lot of fun with this dude, personally. So the next one is going to be Greenwarden Ruarc. And Swords of Glades attacks 1 enemy, transfers all debuffs from this champion to the target, and heals this champion by 5% of their max HP. We'll then do an AoE with a 100% chance of placing the big version of the decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. Also steals all continuous heal buffs from each enemy, and this effect cannot be resisted. I think it's a really strong counter to champions like Wither the Crowned in PvP. I will then place that Taunt buff that is the new buff coming into the game with an increased defense and strengthen on himself. And whenever an ally loses 10% or more of their max HP from a single hit, places a shield buff on that ally for 2 turns equal to 10% of their max HP. So once again, a very funky champion, and I actually like this dude. I think he can have a lot of use for players. So the next ones are going to be Ruella. So everybody knows how great this champion is in terms of 2 free time hitters on 2 abilities. So great for Giant Slayer procs. We got Termite Manipulation, drop defense and weaken for the clan boss, and also a Termite fill and crit rate fill on the A3. So I'm a big fan of Ruella. And then the Mistrider Daithi, shout out to Nub Raids again. He loves this dude. I think it means Dave in Irish, that he was telling me. But apparently it hits really, really hard. So attacks one enemy, chance of removing one random buff from the target, and a 10% chance of granting an extra turn. An AoE 100% chance of placing a drop defense debuff and grants an extra turn if the debuff is placed on all of those enemies. We'll then place an increased attack, increased accuracy, and an extra turn on that A3. So really cool for an epic champion there. And then we have got the final champion on the list is going to be Cormac. So, wow. I actually don't know much about this dude, but he looks pretty cool. And wait, who did we get there? We get a little subscriber. I don't know. It might have popped up on the screen. It's got the noise in my notifications. But Drover attacks one enemy with a decreased speed. We've got, before attacking, has a 100% chance of placing a drop defense on a single target. And then an increased accuracy and crit rate on this champion and grants an extra turn. I think they didn't include Duodim because he was a guaranteed. Same thing with Naya. And Ornn was from the fusion. So those don't seem to be in his 10x, which is a good thing, in my personal opinion. Making sure that I haven't missed out anything else here. The guaranteed Staltus and the champions we talked about. So that is going to be all for the video, guys. If you did enjoy it, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And let me know if you will be going through this event. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.